We are live, man. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Nobody Studios Inside Culture live stream. This is going to
Ooh,
be an incredible session because something that we hear, over and over again is that you can't build culture remotely. And we disagree with that completely. And we're going to talk to you about this because at Nobody Studios, we are committed to bringing together the most world class, passionate people together, like my guest today, Min Bhogaita, to push new boundaries and to grow with, right? So, one of our primary focuses at the studio is how do we create 100 companies to then create and impact the world in a better, make the world better, right? That's really the goal. And so I'm so excited to have Min join because I always look forward to spending time with him. Every opportunity I get, I throw myself into meetings so I can be around him and just feel his positive energy. And our values are aligned in a lot of ways. So this is going to be an incredible conversation. Let me just share a little bit about Min. He's his story, both personal and professionally, is just since he's joined the studio, he's been shaking things up, right? He's the managing director of our IdeaLabs. If you haven't checked out his live stream series for the IdeaLab, you have to check those out because he talks to a lot of people that are bringing incredible ideas into the IdeaLab, and just you get to see a whole different side of the studio. But today we're going to focus a little bit more on the culture aspect. And so Min's got a rich background. He worked with Deloitte for over 25 years. He's helped 14 startups scale, and he also serves on the advisory boards of many or multiple organizations. So I'm going to just jump right in, Min.
let's do it.
What we always say at the studio is we're going to be defined by the people who are attracted to our journey. And I'm so glad you were attracted to our journey. And so one of the questions I love asking everybody is what inspired you to join our journey? So if you could just share with us a little bit about what got you here. And I'm so glad you're here.
Yes, of course, Sejal. And super happy to be on your show today. So what inspired me? So, as you said, I was in sort of corporate world for 25 years, and then the startup world for another 5 years. And I was on this platform called Lunch Club, which I'm sure many of the people listening in will have heard of. And over the last 2 years during the pandemic, I went crazy on it because I love just sort of networking and meeting people. And one day someone said, "Oh, there's this guy called Tyrone in Canada. You really need to meet him. You'll get on like a house on fire, and he's got a portfolio career like I had." And so I met Tyrone, and Tyrone's like, "Oh, there's this American chap that you should really meet. They're doing something really crazy." And that was Dr. Eric, co-founder of the studio and heading up our health and wellness division. So like I had a call with Dr. Eric, and literally the next few days I was like, this is intriguing. I really loved Dr. Eric's style, what he was saying about the mission. He was talking about people first. And I was like, this is a place I want to learn more about. Well, anyway, a few weeks later, Mark was in town. And so Dr. Eric's like, you need to meet Mark. And then some of the other investors and some of the other founders were there as well. And literally on that day, I was like, right, I'm going to hang my hat at this place. This is the place I've been looking for. And here I am. So to answer your question, it was really just the openness, the friendliness, and also the transparency as well. I mean, super humble people, that I met. And then my background is sort of analytics and technology and primarily forensics. And so I'd go home and then I'd like look at their LinkedIn and look at the background. And not once did they mention actually how successful they had been, how many sort of multiple exits they did, how much they'd done in IPOs and stuff. It was very much about tell me about you, and it was nothing about about them. And that was for me, the sorts of people I wanted to be around, and obviously, why I'm here today.
Oh my God. I have the same story. Like seriously, when Mark came to me on he found me on LinkedIn. We were connected, and he had probably looked at my LinkedIn profile beforehand. He had listened to a podcast. We had some mutual connections. So I'm sure he did his vetting before he reached out to me, but I had no idea who he was until after I got off the phone with him. And then I looked at everything he was doing, and I was so humbled that he saw me filling these such big shoes, right, of chief culture officer. I was like, that's incredible. And when he said, especially when he said that we want to build 100 new companies in 5 years, I was like, sign me up. I am down for this challenge because as an employment law attorney, you know, for most of my career, I've seen so many situations, men, where there have been inappropriate comments, demeaning behavior. This is an area where I get super passionate about this topic because I've seen what it does to people when there's workplace incivility that's happening in the workplace. Everyone pays a high price, mentally, physically, financially. It impacts everybody, not just the person that's on the receiving end. And the true cost really is reduced productivity, right? You have greater turnover and your reputation. For a company like ours that's just getting off the ground and we're building, our reputation is so important, right? And so again, all of that then impacts your productivity and profitability. So I started off this session with this notion of, we know we have to get our culture right. It's the key to our success, but we know that it's going to be a little bit different in how we do it because we are building it remotely. We started in the middle of the pandemic, and we've proven that it is possible, right? So I'm in Northern California. You're on the other side, right? Out in London. So Min, what do you think are some of the most important parts of building a strong culture where all your teams are remote and they're based all over the world?
Yeah, initially I was like, okay, obviously you're 8 hours behind where we are. And then, you know, Barry in Manila is probably another sort of, you know, 8 hours ahead of us. And I was like, okay, how's that actually going to work? But actually, it's really working well. I find that my mornings, I can just, you know, sort of say, okay, right, I have all these actions from my meetings and people that I've met and got ideas to review. That morning is my time. And then the afternoon is, you know, when I have sort of, you know, calls with the US team and in between, you know, other countries as well. So, you know, that is an issue when you actually love your job. And as I talk to these amazing people who have, you know, come up with ideas in the lab, and I'm being introduced to lovely people by yourself and Jason and lots of other people in the team, it doesn't even feel like work. And every day I'm having one of those conversations, I just feel so humbled to say, oh my God, I'm in this position, you know, and meeting great people every day, and you know, hopefully, you know, getting them to come with a studio with their great ideas and turning them into companies. So the global thing is absolutely amazing in that, you know, although I've worked globally with, you know, in my previous career, particularly at Deloitte, because we used to do sort of global big projects and investigations, this is totally different in that, you know, we know each other, we're respectful of each other's times. And the funniest thing, like the other day, there was a live stream, and I think it was like, you know, Manila time. So it was like at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to join in and listen to this and chime in and see what I can learn. And I've never done that my whole life, because again, it doesn't feel like this is work. It's like I want to learn everything. I want to kind of, you know, be involved in what's going on, and you know, you can't beat that. It's when you get that sort of feeling on a Sunday evening and you're like, oh, back to it again. That's when you know something's not quite right? So yeah, I'm embracing it. I'm loving the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I know what people have an issue with, you know, building it remotely, and there's a lot of talk about what's the perfect formula, you know, for having, how do we lead remote teams, how do we manage, how do we connect together? And one thing that I've really learned being at Nobody Studio is that there is no perfect formula. Like every team that we have, every individual is different, and so I think it's even better doing it this way because we actually have to look and specifically tailor our approach to culture depending on the team, depending on the person. And so I always say this, a little bit of empathy and civility and being more thoughtful in our interactions with each other goes a long way. But to what you are also saying too, having flexibility, you know, waking up at like 2 a.m. because you're excited about a conversation that's happening. I love that we put all of the meetings on our calendars, because then there's been times where I've done the same thing, where I wake up at like 6 a.m. and I'm like, okay, I'm already up. Let me just jump on and see what they're talking about. So I think that at Nobody Studios, one of the things that's really helped us is the flexibility that we afford people, that people can work when it works best for them. There's no like expectation. We even added onto our signature line sort of a disclaimer that says, you know, I might be emailing you, and I emailed you last night at like 3 a.m, right? And I was responding to emails. I mean, my schedule kind of changes day to day because of my own private business and the work that I do with Nobody Studios. That having that flexibility really is better for my well-being, and it's going to improve my performance too, right? And so when I posted about this event on LinkedIn, somebody had posed a really good question, And I wanted to see if you can shed your sort of insight
Sure.
on this. And you're the data person, so I'm looking forward to hearing your answer. But the
Okay,
question
no
was,
pressure.
what metrics do you use when you're creating an environment that's inclusive, empowering, and supportive? And how do you know that staff feel like they could show up and be their authentic selves? So I'd love to hear what you have to say on that one.
Yeah. So as a yeah, as you say, as a data guy, metrics are important, but even bigger than that, I would say something, again, coming back to your first question, is bring your authentic self, to work every day. And over the last sort of 6 months or so, I've genuinely seen that. I mean, I know I was totally embraced in the culture when people said, "Come on, Min, what's your latest dad joke?" Right? Even though they know how terrible they are. And I was like, right, I've found home here. And I think truly is where, as it says in the question, it's about that authentic self. Everyone has their strengths, everyone has their development points, but the more you can encourage others, be open and transparent with them. But mostly, as you've been sort of, creating the culture manifest, and our thinking on how we want to be treated within an organization, as well as how we want to be respected. All of those things, as far as, yeah, let's not just jump straight into a meeting and go, right, it's time for business, right? Ask about everyone, ask what you can do to help someone, give them sort of feedback. But there's ways of giving feedback as well. One of the metrics is always, how are people kind of, are they sort of turning up, to work? Are they kind of doing what they say, the KPIs that they're supposed to produce? So you've got all of those business measurements and things, but I say this is at a whole new level. I think you can just tell on someone's face from their energy if there's something wrong, and it's always good to just check in with people. When I was working for Deloitte, I had a number of roles, and a large part of my role was actually looking after people. And in the 13 years I looked after one team, only two people ever left that whole team. And it was because you kind of checking in with people. They know that because of the style that I had, and I would want others to have. It was like, if they had an issue, then they would sort of come to me and say, "Man, this has happened. I've done this. I've done a bit of a boo boo. What do you suggest?" And if you have that culture where people come to you, not only in their moments of, "This is amazing, look how great I am," but they can totally open up to you to say, "Yeah, something's not quite right with me, or something. There's a conflict here," and you can talk about it. The worst is you find out because they've handed in their notice and this has been going on for months, and then it's too late. So that, although they're not specific analytics data type metrics, I think you can basically see in someone just by their reactions as to how they are day to day, and you can sense those if the aura is there or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I put up this comment because a roomie contractor joined us, and I'm so glad he's here. But he made this really good comment about that many cultures, right? We're looking at sort of differentiating between hard skills and soft skills, and the difference between them, and what are we valuing, And I mean, one of the things that I, as you know, am really advocating for at the studio is really, when we talk about being authentic or people first, that's really a mindset,
Sure.
right? And it's a behavior of our own well-being. So having people, regularly checking in with people. So during our onboarding process, we assign everybody with what we call a no buddy, so that they have somebody that they can have a relationship with, that they can talk to, and that's a different person than your team lead, right? So then you have this other relationship. But we're always looking at creating spaces, for open dialogue about what we're doing. We invite feedback. I mean, there is nothing better to get feedback from people that are close to us, right? That can tell us about what we could do to improve our processes. I mean, just recently we had an individual provide us with feedback, and it was phenomenal because based on her feedback, I realized that there were some things that I didn't even know. And so if we're open to learning and unlearning from each other and constantly ingrain that into our culture, that sometimes we're going to have to challenge each other, and I tell this to leaders all the times, like, you don't want to surround yourself with people that are just going to agree with everything you're saying, right? You want to surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you to do better in the ways that we want to. And what drives each one of us is going to be different. And we see a lot of companies still practicing this outdated approach of the highest paid person's opinion. They call it HIPPO,
Yes.
right? I mean, I've seen it happen over and over again in my career where you have some senior leader who's there, right? And nobody says anything, but then the senior leader finally speaks up, and then everybody all of a sudden is trying to comment on it. They're jumping in, and what they're doing is either this is what I've seen, and I can't wait to hear what you're going to say, but they'll either paraphrase back what the senior leader just said, right? Or they'll agree with what the senior leader just said. And then you see groupthink start to spread the whole entire room, where now everybody is like, anybody who had an out of a box idea is not going to say it. They're just too scared. There's a lot of different reasons why people don't speak up. And there goes any sort of diversity of thought in that room, right? So in your career, have you seen companies use that approach? And what are some of the consequences of sticking to that outdated HIPPO approach?
Yeah, the HIPPO sort of phrase that I've been using for many years, and again, particularly in my sort of corporate life, where it was exactly as you said. And I used to sort of come at it from a sort of, again, an analytics perspective to say, just like you were saying, if you're relying on the highly paid person's opinion, and that's the way you're going to go. I used to talk about data, and it's like the data should tell the story, and it should be very much around the metrics. And it was, again, seeing people's faces in the room, to say, look, they've got a point, but they've not, said anything, because again, they might feel frustrated. And it's like, okay, you need to join our little clique in our club and think like, otherwise this isn't for you. And people, would then just vote for their with their feet, or it would go down a wrong direction, and then you're like, well, this is what happens if you take only one person. And it might not mean with the highly paid persons. It's sometimes if they think they're the smartest person in the room, they don't listen. One of the techniques I used to always use, and sort of being the world's biggest introvert, no one believes me because I sort of present to lots of senior people and big crowds. But I still am to this day. If there's more than 3 people in a meeting, unless someone says, Min, what do you think? I'll just be quiet. And I think that comes back to, as Rumi was saying, a little bit about the soft skills, a little bit about the culture, to say, well, you only sort of speak when you're spoken to. It's like, my parents taught us. And it's hard to then sort of, for other people to understand these things around different cultures, just different sort of personalities. So one of the things I used to always do is just make sure that I would interject and I would actually pull people in to because I know they've got a view, and say, like, without putting them on the spot, what do you think? Is there another way we could potentially look at this opportunity? And then, as they say, it's always the quietest person, right, that has the most value they can add. And that's what I totally believe in. And yeah, once you start getting more of that culture going in, all of a sudden you can start to change that culture. But it should never get to that stage in the first place, I don't think.
Yeah, and right to what Larry said in the chat, feedback, right? And for a lot of people, that's a scary term, but yet accountability. You can use conflict. You can use those situations where we have differing opinions as creative conflict, right? Yeah. But again, it comes back to getting that commitment from everybody. And I think we've done such a good job at Nobody Studios on that, is that I remember one of the first meetings I went to, we were talking about our core values, and I spoke up, and I was nervous, because I thought that one of our core values was not really a core value, but it was more of an operational value. And I wanted to make that distinction between culture values and operational values. And I remember, and I said it at this meeting, and it got quiet. Like everybody got quiet, but like, who's this new person coming in and challenging the way we're doing things, and that was the first of many times I've done that, and will continue to do that. And all of us have to do that. Sometimes what helps in these situations is when a leader actually speaks up and takes on that, what might be viewed as a difficult conversation, and initiates that and gets everybody into that uncomfortable category or that zone. And, there was an article that I read that talked about sort of this, when the Amazon came out with their phone, and it was called the Fire Phone in 2014. That was like, it became like the laughing joke, right? Like it didn't have any of the 3D features it was supposed to have. They spent like years, I think 4 years building it. This was going to be their big breakthrough into the phone. It was supposed to compare to like Apple's iPhone or something like that. Yeah. They spent like unbelievable amounts of money on that phone, and then they had to literally take it out within weeks because it was a complete flop.
Oh dear.
And when they went back and talked to all the people in those rooms about why did you keep putting the money into it, why did you keep working on this project, their answer was because Jeff wanted us to.
Wow.
Because he's had so much success there, right?
Yeah.
So people are more likely to go away thinking that. And so my question to you is, how are we challenging that at Nobody Studios? And if you could share maybe a couple of examples of how we're challenging that and making sure that ingrained into our culture is this ability to share openly, to challenge each other, to speak about these topics and create an open dialogue with one another.
Yeah. So again, one story from my previous background was I used to find the most value was when we used to get new analysts, new graduates come and join the company, and we'd take them through, here's our processes for, how we do like a forensic project or a consulting project and stuff. And, within sort of 30 seconds, I go, oh, that's really interesting, but why exactly is it we do this, and why do we have to fill this out 3 times? And then you just catch yourself and you're like, oh yeah, there's actually no need. And that freshness, and again in the lab, sort of working with some of the more recent people who've joined the studio, like Adam, it's been fantastic because as someone who's recent to the studio, just him going through like saying like, here's what we've got as far as the processes in the lab, and also here's some of the ideas. He's like, well, actually, and he absolutely loves AI and analytics and geeky stuff like I do. So I'm like, well, here's these, we've had these 50 ideas, and we started talking about various topics. And he's like, actually, this is fascinating for me as well. Can I get involved in like, looking at the ideas? And it's one of those places, right, we have here where it's like, it's not like, well, let me look at your job description. I don't think you've got anything in here around ideation, right? So it could have just been like, I could have just said, well, this is my patch, and I'm going to make the decisions. But obviously, that's never going to be me. So I'm like, oh my god, the more the merrier. You've got time, have a look, and it's brilliant. So now when I get an idea or a new video comes in, I'll share it with Adam and anyone else who wants to have a look. Say, positive, or if there's any sort of things where we think, okay, that wouldn't work because there's this multi-billion-pound organization that's already done it, that's already spent a whole load of cash and it hasn't gone anywhere, then we kind of need to know, right? So Adam does that for us now. He'll go in whenever he's got 10-15 minutes here or there, and he's like, man, I've just reviewed another one, have a look at my comments. And just like you said, it makes us stronger, right? We get a collective view on everything from all different sides, from different perspectives, and that's why I absolutely love there are no wrong answers.
I love that. And, you just led me right into my next question that I was going to talk about. But, we talk about people first a lot as being one of our core values, right? But I think I would like for you to just kind of focus in on so people understand our crowd infused value and why that's a huge part of our culture. Just going along with what you're saying, that's talking about ideas and bouncing those off of people. But from a cultural perspective, why is that a value of ours? Being crowd infused. And if you could just talk to people about that, because I think more organizations really need to adopt this approach. And like what you said, it's not just your role to do that. If you get more people's opinions, especially with people from different backgrounds, different diversity, right, that can actually create create that space for creativity to thrive, right? And what Martin Stark wrote down in the chat here is conflict in a respectful and engaging manner enables important issues to be resolved, on top of creating new companies, right? So yeah, talk to us a little bit about the crowd infused.
Yeah, so this is probably the real highlight of my role, and why I absolutely loved it when yourself and Mark told me about we're going to be crowd infused, because for me, coming from super humble background, having that opportunity just to be heard and getting involved in something as exciting as this, as I've been over the last few weeks since Christmas, since we started our crowdfunding, the best part has been just receiving emails, LinkedIn requests, and then having meetings with people who have like, hey, I've had this idea for, either this morning in the shower and, can I talk to you about it? Or something that someone's had in their brain for like 15 years and now they've got an opportunity. But, again, amazed by just how diverse and where all of these different ideas are coming from. I've had conversations in the last couple of weeks from people in Nigeria to India to various parts of the US, you name it, right? And what's kind of humbling, because they don't know me anyway, they're like, oh my God, you're willing to talk to me, or you replied to my email, but you're like the director of the lab. I'm like, yeah, but I'm only mean. Come on, I do dad jokes. It's not that serious. Right? And again, you just sort of step back and said, like, this is the opportunity that I wish I had, to kind of contribute somewhere, had a place to kind of go. And lots of the people who have sort of heard of the crowdfunding have literally said, this is my chance to, even if I don't have an idea, I'm super passionate about this area of this technology or this sector, be that health or wellness or clean tech or whatever. I finally got a place where I can sort of come in and get involved and, share my comments, or even potentially, get involved in creating one of these companies that, we plan to do in the next 5 years. And that is super, super humbling to say, right, we don't really care, how rich you are, how much money you have. We just want you for your passion, for your energy, and, to come on that mission. So it's great to kind of fly that flag and say, like, come on, if I can do this, anyone can.
And you hit so many points, right in what you just said, because from the culture perspective, I think it's so important to just build that feedback loop into our framework so that we get used to receiving but good feedback as well as the bad feedback. And as more people, because it is new for people. I mean, I just spoke with somebody on our team and they're like, this is new for me. Like, I can't believe that Min is asking me to join this meeting, or that my opinion matters, because it's not everywhere. Not every culture, not every organization allows for that. A lot of them say they do. A lot of them absolutely say, open door policy and all of that.
Yeah.
But are they really?
Yeah.
And are they really allowing them to do that? Because the fear of retaliation in speaking up about certain situations, especially the culture related issues, you have a personality conflict with a coworker, you're not getting a response back to some email you've sent. These kind of things are person to person human sort of interactions that we have. And when you're interacting with people that are all over the globe, all over different time zones, you may not get the same kind of response that you're looking for because of what you're used to. Right. And so we have to educate people too in explaining that, okay, maybe you didn't get the response in 24 hours, like maybe you're used to, but it's because that person's in a different time zone. They're waking up at 1 a.m. your time. So there's a lot of different nuances. So I think for people that are watching and looking to build remote cultures, and crowd infusion is a great way to encourage feedback, but also to then make sure you take surveys, reach out to people, do your monthly survey, or however you want to do it, quarterly surveys, to get a pulse on your culture, especially when you're global, because different needs might come out from these surveys that you take. And I'm old school. I think surveys work good to a certain extent, but I think the one-on-one contact, like touching in with people, I'm always slacking people to say, hey, how's your week going? I'll send positive little emojis to people to kind of just remind them I'm here. I like just jumping on the phone call to have a conversation about what's going on. And when you build that trust, it takes time, right? But once you get there, that's where the true creativity and innovation can thrive, right?
One of the things that I've really loved is the amount of people within the studio who have sort of, directly sort of asked for feedback and say, what can I do better? How can I, we run this meeting better, or whatever. And it's, again, having that confidence to say, positive, or, all we're going to do is make things better, right? And you can only sort of, people will only say that sort of stuff if they know it's a
absolutely
sort of culture for doing that. I have a funny story, and initially I thought it was a bit of a conflict, and this is a shout out to Jason. Jason said to me, Min, I need to kind of pull you up on something. I'm like, come on, I'm open, transparent. I'm here to learn. What is it? And he goes, like, every time we talk, you keep calling me mate, and we don't do that here. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. That's how we do stuff in London. How can I improve things here? And he's like, here you call me brother. This is how we talk. I'm like, okay, this is the sort of culture I love.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it. We can educate each other, and people, if you create that sort of psychological safety to be able to
Yes.
speak your mind in a respectful way and be civil to each other. Again, I'm just, me, I'm such a huge fan of that. So I know we're running out of time here, but for everybody that's listening to the amazing stuff that we're doing at Nobody Studios, can you just share with people how can people bring their ideas, their talent, their capital? You mentioned the equity crowdfunding campaign. Maybe you can share a little bit about what we're doing there with everybody before we sign off.
Yes, of course. So yeah, very quickly, like if you want to join us on the journey, if you have an idea that you've had whilst you were going on that walk, or something you've had for 10 years in your brain, please, you can email me directly at min at nobodystudios.com, and I'll be more than happy to send you some guidance as to how we're doing the ideas, how we're doing the filtering. But also, if you just want to get involved in something, we do talent rounds every week. And then we also have the investor rounds as well, if you want to learn more about joining us with your capital as well. So yeah, however you want to get in touch with me or Sejal, on LinkedIn, or through our emails, feel free to get in touch, and happy to get you on board in however you want to be with us.
Excellent. Yes. So definitely go and check out our equity crowdfunding campaign on Republic. It's only $100 to invest and support what we're doing. But more importantly, that it gets you into the nobody crowd. So you become part of our culture. You're going to become part of the people that are going to be reviewing and providing feedback on some of the companies and the ideas that we have. And you get to bring your talent if you want to, right? So this is a kind of choose your own adventure sort of situation, and whatever fits your schedule, your lifestyle, we can come up with something for almost everybody that wants to be a part of this journey. If not now, to build 100 companies, at some point we need to have this crowd be huge so that we can rely on each other to make a difference in this world together. So anything else you want to add, Min, before we say bye to everybody?
No, just I'm having the best time ever, and yeah, absolutely loving working at the studio and learning lots every day.
Thank you. I learned so much from you and from all of the other nobodies that we have. So thank you everyone for joining. It was a great session today. I'm doing another one on Friday with our CEO of Ovations, Ray Leonard Jr. So don't forget to jump on and support us and provide your feedback on that broadcast as well. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.